Hi everyone, I'm Danielle. I'm a researcher based out of San Francisco, currently working at Atlassian, as Marissa mentioned. And I am so excited to be here with you today to share my lightning talk on research in command. So I'd like to start out by having everyone think for a second about an orchestra. You can have all the greatest musicians in the world, but without a conductor, what you get is more like noise than music. And if anyone else here has ever sat through a middle school band recital, we got one, you probably know what I mean. The conductor obviously isn't playing every instrument, but they're also not just standing off to the side supporting. They're shaping the timing, alignment, and clarity so the group can actually come together. And to me, that's exactly what research is about. Not necessarily orchestrating the whole team, but setting the tempo of research so that it matches what the team really needs. And part of why this metaphor clicked for me when I was thinking about this topic is that research is usually, or at least I've heard it talked about as support for product teams. We surface insights, uncover opportunities, and help people make better decisions. But support, I've realized, isn't always enough. Support keeps you adjacent to the decisions that are being made, waiting to be invited in, essentially creating sound, not music. And when I was in my last role at Thumbtack during the biggest launch in product launch in company history, I knew that wasn't going to cut it. Now, to be clear, I wasn't, and still am not, an exec. I was a senior researcher at the time, but I could see pretty clearly that the way that we were doing research just wasn't meeting the moment, and nobody was going to fix that for me. And so I stepped in. I took ownership, and I drove a different way of working, one that made research part of the decision-making and not something that came in afterward. And so today, I want to share with you how I put that mindset into practice during that critical launch, and why just as intentionally I decided to take a step back when the time was right. So this launch was massive. It fundamentally changed how users were going to interact with the platform and involve coordination across product, design, engineering, marketing, and legal. Every team had something at stake, and the pace was intense. If you're feeling kind of dizzy looking at this slide, that was pretty much how we were feeling too. Except for this slide actually is going to end soon, and that chaos that we were feeling kind of felt like it wasn't going to end. So in the middle of that, really the last thing I wanted was for research to kind of slow things down. And I knew if we stuck with our usual playbook, we'd end up being kind of a bottleneck, and that just didn't feel like a great option at the time. And so I made a different decision. I built a rolling research program from scratch. So it's definitely not something the team had done before, because normally research happened through formal intake, scoped projects, sometimes design-led brainstorms. But that model just didn't seem to be fitting. Because in that moment, we didn't need depth, we needed motion. And so I set up a lightweight program to continuously pull in user feedback. I could synthesize it quickly, feed insights directly into design and product decisions that way. And every week I shared updates in product syncs, in Slack threads, in stand-ups that I'd never even been to before, basically wherever decisions were happening in real time. And that's when the dynamic kind of started to shift. Instead of me chasing teams with research, they started coming to me. Designers would ping me in Slack after a day of sessions and ask things like, what are you hearing? PMs would ask things in roadmap reviews like, what does that mean for the launch? Or, what should we change? And why? Because research wasn't an extra step anymore. It was baked into their rhythm. They knew that I was checking assumptions in the background, and so when questions came up, research wasn't a delay. It was the quickest way forward. And that was the turning point. I wasn't just delivering insights. I was helping unlock decisions as they were being made. It was fast, it was high touch, and it worked. But it was not forever. So fast forward 3 months, and the program had proven its value. The team was moving faster, decisions were clearer, and the momentum was real. But here's the twist. I decided to stop it altogether. Not because it wasn't working, but because the business didn't need it anymore. The launch had stabilized, those urgent, high-stakes calls were behind us, and what the company needed now was depth over motion. We weren't playing the same symphony anymore. the score had changed, and my job was to help the team play that new tune. And so we shifted back to project-based research. It was intentional, scoped, and more strategic. Now, I'll be honest, that was not a popular decision with the designers that I was working with, because for months they'd been getting fast, ongoing insights on their work. And then I came in like the person who turns down the music at the party, just not very popular. And so I had to explain the why. The cost of speed is focus. The trade-off of reach is depth. And the real value of research isn't in constant answers. It's in asking the right questions at the right time. I know that makes it kind of sound simple, but I promise you it was not, because I'd worked really hard to build trust with those particular designers and that team, and I really hated that feeling of disappointing them. But I think sometimes disappointing people is part of making strong decisions. So yes, it was uncomfortable, but that shift forced me to redefine what impact really means. It's not about methods, it's about meeting the moment. And so in the end, that decision to stop was actually just as impactful as the one to start, because it reinforced something important, which is that impact isn't always about volume or visibility. Sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is slow down, zoom out, and help your team find clarity, not just momentum. And that experience also taught me that being an executive-minded researcher shows up less in the programs you run or those flashy decks that you deliver, and more in how you influence the calls being made in the room. Because let's be honest, those decks half the time don't even get opened anyways. So it's more about seeing around corners, choosing the right rhythm for the moment, even if that means turning the volume up and then back down again, and positioning research as a lever that shapes strategy and not just validates it. So that means asking ourselves questions like, what decision are we helping the team make? What's preventing that decision from being made well? What does this moment require? Is it speed or perspective? And then matching our approach accordingly. So if you take away just one thing from today, I hope it's this. If research only supports, we risk being sidelined. We risk moving at the wrong tempo, answering questions that nobody's asking, or showing up too late to the ones that matter most. But when research leads with the right timing, alignment, and clarity, it becomes part of how critical decisions get made. But here's the thing. Researchers won't always just figure this out on their own. If you want this kind of impact on your teams, you have to cultivate it. So that means things like teaching your team how to set the tempo, maybe running workshops, reviews, or L&D sessions where researchers can practice reframing decisions, shifting tempo, maybe role-playing when to speed up or slow down, basically making it a part of the craft that you develop. Give permission to change the pace. Tell your researchers things like, it's your job to flag when the speed is costing clarity or when we're stuck overthinking. And then, most importantly, back them publicly when they do it so that the team sees that it's expected and not risky. Reward decision unlocking behaviors, not just output. Celebrate when a researcher reframed a conversation, unblocked a decision, or shifted the team's pace, not just when they deliver the research report. In other words, teach them how to orchestrate, not just play instruments. Because the risk isn't just that insights get ignored, it's that teams make their biggest bets without clarity, without perspective, and without confidence. Being an executive-minded researcher isn't about asking, what method should I use? It's about asking, what does this moment demand? And am I willing to make that call? Sound is easy. Music is harder. But what moves teams forward is music. And the opportunity for you as leaders is to empower your researchers to step into that role. All right, now I'd like to hand it over to Megan, who has a really great talk. Thank you.